Hi, and welcome to Lincoln School Providence presents the Rhode Island Festival of Children's Books and Authors. My name is Megan Lenahan, and I am the librarian here at Lincoln School. But I am also one of the organizers of the Rhode Island Festival of Children's Books and Authors. This year, we are unable to hold the festival here at Lincoln because of COVID. But we still wanted to give you an opportunity to experience authors and illustrators, which is why we are bringing the Rhode Island Festival of Children's Books and Authors to you through Zoom. This year, the festival is going virtual, but we are staying local. All the authors and illustrators you will hear in our series are either from or have roots in Rhode Island. We are in partnership with the Rhode Island Center for the Book, Books on the Square, and the Providence Community Library. Providence Community Library invites you to subscribe to the Providence Community Library's YouTube channel for more great virtual children's programs through this winter. This series will be brought to you every month and with special thanks to our generous sponsors who are listed here. Save the date. Our next event is on Thursday, December 3rd at 1 o'clock with Gaia Cornwall, author of Jabari Jumps and Jabari Gives. She's also an alum of Lincoln School, which is pretty cool. And if you would like to purchase and have a book personalized, you can do so at Books on the Square. Remember to mention Rhode Island Book Fest. And I also just want to say that this is Anika's first stop on her book tour. And we are so excited that she is launching her tour with us. So now I'd like to turn the program over to moderator Cheryl Space, the director of the Providence Community Library. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you all for being here today. We are thrilled to be partnering with the Rhode Island Festival of Children's Books and Authors and the Rhode Island Center for the Book on this very special program. I want to give a special shout out to Lee Smith at the Mount Pleasant Library and Amy Rosa from Washington Park for running the presentation and monitoring the chat for your questions today. And I want to say a very special welcome to our special guest, Anika Denise. Anika lives in Rhode Island with her family, but she was raised in Queens, New York. This past January, Anika won a huge honor when she received a Pura Belpré Author Honor Award for planting stories, the life of librarian and storyteller Pura Belpré, a New York City librarian, storyteller, and library advocate who was born in Puerto Rico. She's written 10 picture books, some of which you may have read, including Starring Carmen, Monster Trucks, and Pigs Love Potatoes. A fun fact, Anika is married to Christopher Denise, a children's book illustrator, and they've created 4 books together. Anika is all about sharing her gifts and giving back to the community of Latinx writers for youth through being a mentor for Las Musas and Latinx Pitch. I recommend all of the teachers listening today check out Las Musas to learn about wonderful new books and authors to read and recommend to the youth in your world. A special thank you to the Rhode Island Center for the Book and Director Kate Lentz for providing classrooms, libraries, and learning pods with free copies of the book we are celebrating today, which is A Girl Named Rosita. So a note on today's program. First, I'm going to ask Anika some questions, and then all of you in the audience will have a chance to ask Anika your questions. So please type any questions in the chat, and Lee and Amy from Providence Community Library will monitor the chat and ask your questions. So welcome, Anika. We're so thrilled to be with you today, celebrating the birthday of your brand new book, which is A Girl Named Rosita, the story of Rita Moreno, actor, singer, dancer, and trailblazer. So my first question is, how did you decide to write a book starring Rita Moreno? Do you feel a special connection to her life story?
Well, first, I just want to say thank you for that lovely introduction and to everyone for this event. I can't think of a better way than to celebrate a book launch than all these organizations in my state coming together. So, mwah, gracias. And yes, I was absolutely connected to Rita Moreno. Growing up in New York, I was a theater nerd. I loved performing arts. I joined my drama club, and I did theater camp in upstate New York. And Rita Moreno was someone who shared a heritage with me, but also was a name that was a household name. And of course, in Puerto Rican families, when someone has Puerto Rican heritage and they're a celebrity or doing something great, it's almost like they're part of your family and you cheer for them. So Rita Moreno was obviously with her iconic performance in a film called West Side Story. And the kids watching may have not seen that film. It was the first version came out in the 1950s, or was made in the 1950s, early 60s. And it is being remade into a new film that Steven Spielberg is directing. But so you might hear about it soon. It comes out next year. But she starred in that film, and she sang and danced and was this incredible powerhouse performer that as a little girl, I looked at her performance and was like, wow, starry-eyed, truly. And also she gave me somebody to see myself in, right? As a little Puerto Rican kid who I wasn't the best singer, but I really tried and enjoyed acting. And my mom and I used to go and see Broadway shows when we could. She would get half price discount tickets at TKTS, where you get tickets in New York now, those big, wonderful booths. But before you could go to those big booths and get your discount tickets, it was a mail-in ticket service, and you could sign up to see shows before they would come out and see them in preview. And that was something special that I did. I would take the subway from Queens into Manhattan and go to a Broadway show. So that world always I found fascinating, and used to have dreams of wanting to be on Broadway. And so of course Rita Moreno was la reina of the queen of film and theater, and she did it all, right? So there was also this part of Rita Moreno that I don't know if you guys have seen, but she was also on a show called, it's a very old show, The Electric Company. She had a very famous children's PBS television show, and she had a recurring role. She was in the first cast, and she had this great line. She played a mail carrier, and she had this great line. She would say, "Hey, you guys." So in my family, that became something that we repeated a lot. Like, when you walk in the door, "Hey, you guys." And she was just so multi-talented that the thought of doing a book on her was so exciting. I like to write picture book biographies, and she was just like the perfect subject for me to write about.
Awesome. And I recommend that everyone Google Rita Moreno, an animal from Sesame Street, because if you need a laugh and a moment of levity, it made me crack up. I was so glad Anika shared that.
It was actually the Muppet Show.
Yesterday. The Muppet Show.
Yeah,
yes,
the
Muppet Show. Sorry.
Yeah.
Great. So my second question is, how did you do the research for this book? How did you find out all about her, beyond your personal connection to her?
Sure. Well, because she's, such a big celebrity, and there's so much out there about her. Her performances were where I started. I rewatched a lot of them. I looked at hours of footage of her in interviews. I watched her in the moment. You can go to the Academy Award Oscars website, YouTube channel, and you can watch old award moments. So that moment that she won the Oscar is available for you to watch. So I just kind of poured through those kinds of things that you can find online. And it's amazing how much is available. It's truly different to do your research now, as probably students understand too, that a lot of this is at your fingertips now, which is amazing. But also had to make sure that my sources were good sources, because if it's on the internet, it might not necessarily, be a good source. So I had to do some digging and checking. And then, of course, Rita wrote an incredible memoir for adults. It's an adult title, and so that had rich personal stories of hers, really funny ones too. Stories of her struggles, of her triumphs, of old Hollywood and what that was like. So I think that was the first thing I did, was pick up her book and read it, and really enjoyed it. And I really recommend, if you've read this picture books, and the adults that are watching, if you're interested to learn more about her, that's also a fascinating read. So I did not interview her directly. I had enough material for a picture book. But I did, when the plan was to send her the book in progress and have her look at it. So we sent it to her agent. And we didn't really have a lot of time because initially we were going to try to get that book out when the film was coming out, and it was supposed to come out this December, but it got pushed back because of COVID. But initially we were hoping it would come out at the same time. So we kind of had to send it to her, and then it had to go to press in order for it to be ready. But, you know, it's interesting. Sometimes when you write a biography of someone, you can do that without talking to the person. So in this case, I did. But I do certainly hope that she has, that she likes it.
Oh my gosh, I'm sure she'll love it. So as people who've read the book know, there's many challenging issues in this book. She had to leave her baby brother when she left Puerto Rico. She had to travel to a whole new country where she didn't speak the language. There's bullying. She had to deal with stereotypes. Yet she really rises to all the challenges. And I felt like you really presented that sort of overcoming. But how did you decide which stories and events to portray in sharing her story? Because there's so many things. And I imagine trying to figure out what to put in the book. Can you describe how you went through that process?
Yes. And that's always the challenge with a picture book. You know, you have maybe 32 or 40 pages, and how do you get someone's life into language that's simple enough for the picture book age reader, but also shows the richness and the fullness of their experience. And so what we decided to do with this one, what I decided to do was to set it in a set time frame. It doesn't span her entire life because, you know, Rita is in her 80s now and still working and having a career. So that would be hard to fit all of that in. But you know, I really wanted to focus on what it was like for her as a little girl. This is for young readers. So I thought that they would relate to that feeling of going to a new place and any kind of new experience like that, whether you move to a new school or a new country, there's something relatable in that and having to acclimate to that. So I wanted to start there, her journey when she's in Puerto Rico. And really her mother wakes her up one morning and says, we're moving. She doesn't have a lot of notice. And it's a huge upheaval in her life, really. And I carried that through to her being in New York, and then her realizing that she has a talent and wanting to dance and taking dance lessons, into going to Hollywood. And sort of the climactic moment of the picture book is when she wins her Oscar. That is absolutely not where her story ends, but for the purposes of this picture book, it really worked well. It was a great, triumphant, iconic, historic moment to end the book on. So that's kind of how I looked at it, with a fixed frame. And then it was really how to create a story thread. Even though you're writing a true story, it has to have that arc that all good stories do, that beginning, middle, end, the climactic moment, the obstacles, which her story was really perfect for that. It had everything. And so I looked for those moments and really built my story around them. And you know, I think it's a compelling read. You know, it's true story, but it has all those elements of good storytelling, I hope.
Absolutely. And that leads me to the next question, which is, you know, in a picture book, it's really a partnership with the illustrator as well, you know, and sometimes you stated something very simply like leaving her brother, and then we're just looking at the big wall of the ship, you know, and the little window with her just looking through. And when I went back and looked at it, the richness of those experiences was really a beautiful partnership between the two. So I'm wondering how the illustrator, Leo Espinosa, got selected, and how did you feel when you got the book? What was your reaction?
So how it works with choosing an illustrator for a book is that you and your editor on the book, and usually an art director, sit down and have a conversation of how you think the book should look and who might be good for that. And when we looked at Leo's work, Leo is an award-winning best-selling illustrator. You may have heard of his picture book, Island Born, which also won a Pura Belpré illustrator honor. And he has this wonderful kid friendliness to his artwork. It's vibrant. There are big shapes. The children, you want to like jump in with them and play with them. But then he had these pieces in his portfolio. He's also done several New Yorker covers. And they were stylized and still very much Leo Espinosa's style, but they had a sophistication about them, and some of them were like, looked like the people could be in the 1950s, very glam, very, you know, very golden age Hollywood in a way. And we thought the two of those things combined would make the perfect style for this book. And so when we saw that, we all got really excited. And then you sit there and you just cross your fingers that he has time in his schedule and wants to do the book. And thankfully he did say yes to the project. And when the first sketches even came in, because you get to see it along the way, which is nice. You know, you'll see a few sketches, you'll see the first color piece, and then the whole book will come together. I was blown away. There are some spreads. Can I hold up a spread that I really, there's this one where little Rosita is, here's the one where you're talking about with the ship, which is really nicely done. And there's so much detail. If you look, your eye goes here, but then there's this whole scene playing out up here. But one that I really love is when she has finally sort of come into her own and discovered that she can make a life, you know, here in New York. It seems so different when she first comes, and she's so homesick. But there's this one scene where she's dancing, and he said it in Central Park, and it just took my breath away. It was exactly what I imagined. And her, just like, there's those page turns in picture books. They're so important. And that page turn makes me, every time, makes me happy and makes me sort of gasp because it's so lovely. And then there was also really great like details of, you know, that he had to do a lot of research for. He mentioned to me when we chatted that, you know, figuring out what a movie camera looked like in the 1950s. He did a ton of research for that. And it just, you can see the care and the detail. And then of course, another one of my favorite spreads is this scene, we call this one the Dancing Ritas, where she is in her iconic dress that she wore in West Side Story. And you just get the sense of movement and color and energy that's perfect for the book. So I'm blown away by his talent and just grateful that he did my book.
It's a stunning collaboration between the words and the movement, and I felt that energy. I just wanted to give her a high five when I saw her dancing in Central Park. It's like she's right there with you. So I know we want to get to other people's questions. I just have one more. So I noticed that when Rita won her Academy Award, you say, and this is a quote from the book, "With the pride of her people on her shoulders, Rosita Dolores Alverio from Juncos has made history." And that made me think, what is the importance of a name, and why did you emphasize her name and name change in the story? Because I felt it as a reader. It got mentioned several times, and how her name was changed by the Hollywood studio and how she negotiated that. But then at her big moment, you went back and called her the name she was born with. So I didn't know if you could talk about that a little bit.
Sure. Well, first, you know, she was little Rosita. Her mom is Rosa, she's Rosita. That's how she was known. There is like one film credit of her as Rosita Moreno. And she chose Moreno because she felt that Alvario was just, at the time, there were a lot of American casting directors who were mispronouncing it. And she just felt it sounded better. So it was her stepdad's name. She took it as a stage name, but it was going to be Rosita, you know. And once she got to Hollywood, they really packaged her and forced her to assimilate to this idea of beauty that really was an idea of not, you know, Caucasian beauty, right? A forced sort of acceptability of whiteness on her. And she was not, you know, she's fairly fair-skinned, but, you know, it's like, we love that you're, and I put this in quotes, exotic, you know, that you're this Latina actress that can play all these characters, but we need to change you just a little bit to make you acceptable to an American audience, which was difficult. I mean, that is giving up a piece of your identity to fit in. And she talks very candidly about the struggles with that. And so in one of her first meetings, she thought she was being called in to be fired.
Oh, wow.
And it was that they were like, Rosita's too ethnic and we need to change it to something else. And they had all these crazy names that she was like, oh, that's not, you know, Orchid. They wanted to name please. She was like, please don't make me go by Orchid. Not that that's not a bad name, but it just didn't feel right for her, you know? And they said Rita, and it happened to be one that she kind of recognized because of Rita Hayworth being the niece of the man who taught her to dance. And, you know, she's like, okay, I can live with that. But it was so hard for her to break through as a Latina that she accepted those things. And then, you know, she was Rita Moreno from then on and kind of lived out her career that way, but to her mother, to mommy, who, you know, was her support throughout her whole life, gave her dance lessons, came with her wherever she went, was her best friend and beloved mother. She was always Rosita. And there's this great quote when she won one of her Emmys where she says, Rita Moreno is thrilled, but Rosita Dolores Alvarillo is undone, you know, and she even says from Juncos, where she grew up, where she came from. So I think that it's a recognition of her roots. She says, you know, I always felt like I was this Puerto Rican child, like that Puerto Rican child who came here, never left her, and very much informed who she is and still is, and what she chose to focus on as an activist later in her life. So the name means something, you know, and I included it to show both that she lost control of a little bit of her identity, like she had to forfeit a little bit of that, but then she took back her power, you know, so that's why it's an important piece in the story. And I like that we end with this to show her journey. I think it was empowering in a way for her to reclaim that.
And it was a very powerful moment in the book for me. I just kept thinking about it, the way she said that. So, and then it made me go back and look through all the sort of changes in her name and what had happened and how it emerged. So thank you for sharing all that.
You're welcome.
So I have many more questions, but I know all of you have questions. So I'm going to stop now and thank you so much, Anika. And I'm going to turn it over to Amy and Lee with some of the burning questions of those who are sharing this with us. So over to you guys.
Hi, everyone. So we welcome you all to post questions in the Q&A or the chat. We'll be monitoring those. And one thing we always like to do is we like to show your face to Anika if you'd like to ask your question in virtual land. So we invite you all to do that. So we're going to start with our first question in the chat was from Jenny Green's class, which is Lincoln School, and Athena from first grade wanted to ask a question. So I'm going to allow Jenny to talk if she wants to. And Athena's question was, why didn't the brother move with the family?
So that's, hi, Athena. Thank you for watching. That's such a good question. And I'm so glad you brought it up because, you know, Cheryl mentioned that in her, when she asked me the question, like the book deals with some difficult topics. And it was something I talked about with other writers who helped me read my stories, with my editor. And we were like, okay, we have to leave this part in. This is the truth of what happened. And the truth of what happened is her mother could really only afford to take one child. Okay. And I can't imagine being put in that situation, but that happens with, you know, I'm sure these choices that people coming have to make to this country sometimes aren't the easiest. And so hers was a matter of being practical. She wanted to have a better life. She was not married to her husband anymore. And when she left, she could only take one child with her. I'm sure, I know even Rita, when she talked about it in her memoir, said how difficult that was. And I think that there was honestly, genuinely a moment where she thought that she could bring him later, but it didn't happen. And he was happy staying with his grandfather and father in Puerto Rico, and that's where he remained. So it was painful for her, but it's the true story, so I had to leave that in. But that's an excellent question. It's an excellent question.
Now let's see if Miss Peron's class would like to ask their questions. I will allow you to talk. Just give me one moment.
Hi.
Hi.
So I think Ava had a question. Ava, do you remember what your question was?
What inspired you to write your books?
Oh, well, I am a big reader, and I am married to a children's book illustrator, and that love of reading and then the introduction to children's books through meeting my husband was the way that I really first kind of got interested in the idea of writing picture books. And so I tried it out. My first drafts were no good. I didn't know how to write for kids. I was a writer for my job, but I wasn't writing picture books. But I know that I loved reading them growing up. I loved the illustrations in children's books. So I thought it would be really cool to try and do this as my job. So the inspiration was just a love of reading and books and writing.
Should we ask another one?
Yeah,
Yes.
that sounds great.
All right. So let's see, Jasmine, do you remember your first question?
How many books have you wrote in the year?
In a year? Oh my goodness. Picture books I can write in a few months usually. Although when I have to research, it takes time to do the research for a nonfiction picture book. So I suppose I'm writing, I have 10 books out altogether, but then there are those books that I try writing that maybe the idea, they don't become books, because that happens sometimes. You have an idea, you try it, it's not really working, and you move on to something else. So I'm writing all the time, but probably I could write, my editor's gonna be like, you can? My agent, you can? But I could write maybe, 4 or 5 picture books in a year.
How about one more? Can we ask one more?
Okay.
All right, go ahead, Emma. Emma, you'll ask the last one for right now. So I was taking a moment to unmute.
What are the difficulties of being an author?
Ooh, I think that's a good segue from the last question. I think sometimes when something's not working, that can feel difficult when you really want to get your ideas out, but you're having a hard time, you have writer's block, or you love something, but an editor, it doesn't find a home because you have to have a publisher publish your book. That can be hard, dealing with the rejection of that, or what some people would call failure. But I don't believe that any of those are failures. I believe that in every idea, even the ones that don't get turned into books, that there's a nugget of something wonderful that I can take for another project. And that I always learn something through the process. But, taking critical feedback. I don't know if students out there, when you hand a piece of writing in or you show a friend and they have suggestions, you have to learn how to take a deep breath and say, okay, this good to have feedback. It's all to make my writing better. But that can be sometimes hard. So I think that's probably the hardest thing is loving an idea and maybe it not finding a home right away.
Thank you. Let's
questions.
try. Yeah, great questions. Perhaps Ms. Carrero's class would like to go next.
Yeah, that's my daughter's class. Shout
Okay,
outs to
okay.
Ms. Carrero.
Let's invite them. Let's see.
Hi.
Paul is gonna ask us ask a question. Which one do you want to ask? Which one?
Have any of your books got a medal?
Yes, one of them. Actually, the book, I don't have the one with the shiny sticker on it. It's behind me. But this book, Planting Stories, The Life of Librarian and Storyteller Pura Beltré, won an award actually named after the person the book is about. So this is my copy before the sticker was put on the book. It gets those little shiny silver stickers. And the Spanish version of this book, Sembrando Historias, also received a shiny sticker from Bank Street College of Education for one of the best Spanish language picture books of the year. So they have one that was the big moment and the biggest award I've ever, won, and it was lots of fun. But even the ones that don't win awards, that's okay. I write them because I love this job of writing picture books. So awards are nice, but they're not everything.
We have one more. You don't remember?
I'm going to just say one more thing too. In Rhode Island, we have the Rhode Island Latino Books Month Award. That's our own special state award. And that award, kids get to vote on their favorite books after they read it. So you can check that out online.
How many books have you made in your time as an author?
This is my, A Girl Named Rosita will be my 10th book. That's also available in Spanish. I'll hold it up. And I am working on another one right now. It's another picture book biography. It hasn't been announced yet, so I can't say who it's about, but it's somebody that I think that especially young people will be very interested in learning her story.
How old were you when you went to your first Broadway show?
Oh gosh, I think I was about 6 years old. And I'm pretty sure it was Peter Pan. Yeah, where they flew across the stage, and I was gone. I was hooked. I wanted to see every Broadway show after that.
I think that's our last person to come up.
Thank you. What fun questions.
All right, so now we're going to invite Montana Green to come up if she wants to. We've got, the question is there any other celebrities you plan on writing on?
Possibly. The person I'm writing about right now is not in entertainment, but is very well known and is a celebrity in her own right. So I'll give you a hint. And then you can, when it's announced and the book is out, you can say, oh, I heard about that. She gave me a hint about that.
Okay, awesome. Montana, did you want to say hi at all?
No, I'm good. And my name is actually Logan.
Oh, hi, Logan.
I'm on my mom's computer.
Hi, Logan. Nice to see you. Do you have any ideas of what celebrities I should write about?
Not really.
The requests? I'll take notes. Thank you.
And I'm going to give a shout out to my daughter's class too. Hope Academy's in there. Miss Allison.
Yay.
My daughter's Alex. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Alex at Hope Academy. Thanks for joining us.
And we have, let's see, we have another one from Lincoln School. Sia at Lincoln School. That's Erica Cross's class. So we'll add her. The question is, why did you choose to write a book about a Latino woman?
Well, one, I think they're underrepresented in literature and kids literature. So I want to shine a spotlight on them. And also because I am a Latina woman. So I identify with these stories. And I think that there are a lot of kids who also identify with them, who need to see themselves in the books that they read and know about their heroes and heroines and these luminaries. But I also write books with characters that are Latinx in my fiction stories too. So I try to reflect those in my characters.
Great, thank you. Lee, do you want to grab one from the Q&A?
Let's try Ms. Simpson's class. I will unmute you.
Yeah, not the tenders. I got the boneless wings that they call. No, yeah, the non-stick.
Well, let's see. Let's try. Sorry, we'll get back to you.
There's some questions in the Q&A too. I don't know if we want to pull from there as well.
Let's try. We have an anonymous attendee here. Do you know how many awards Rita has won?
She's won many, many awards, but the most famous of her awards, they call it she has the EGOT, which stands for an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony Award. And there's not that many performers that have all of those awards. And she did it, I think, the fastest of anyone, or the second fastest. And she is the only Latina performer to have that. And she also recently won a Peabody Award, which is a very prestigious award. So, and I'm sure she had, and National Medal of the Arts awarded to her from the President of the United States. So her award shelf is probably in her home is probably full.
So the kindergartners at Highlander said, thank you so much for the book. And they love the book and the pictures so much. I'm going to allow them to talk too. And they want to know if you moved here from far away and what happened with baby Francisco and Rosita's puppy.
So I moved to Rhode Island from New York area. So I did not come from that far away. Rita certainly did. She came from Puerto Rico. And what happened to Francisco is he stayed home with his dad and his grandfather and grew up very differently and apart from Rita, which is difficult. I can't, imagine what that was like. I'm sure it was very hard, but that was the reality of that family's specific situation. And Rita talks about it and says that she has, it hurts her heart, and she acknowledges that as something that brings her, that she's had to come to peace with about in her life. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you
welcome.
so much. The students actually just went out to gym, but I'm recording your response because they were really excited and they loved your story.
Thank you so much.
Okay. I'm going to let my daughter's class speak too, because one of them, Charlotte, has a question.
Hi, Charlotte.
All right, go ahead, Charlotte.
What was the hardest part about writing the book?
I think the hardest part was just what we were talking about, how to put in the tougher stuff that Rita had to go through without it being not a hopeful story. So things like Rita getting bullied. She really was. She talks about having to come home from school and kids chasing her and calling her names when she first arrived. And later on, being asked to play roles that weren't accurate representations of the people that she was playing, and eventually saying, no, I'm not going to play those roles anymore, and standing up for herself. Those are all tough things, and we had to be delicate about how we included them in the book, but we had to include them in the book. because that's real life. We all have difficult things in our life. And when you're telling a true story, it was just kind of how to balance that was the thing. And, Rita herself had to deal with that in her life, how to balance that. So it was a challenge, but it was also really, I think, interesting for me as a writer to try and do that. I learned a lot in this process.
Thank you. I have another question
Mhm.
from Jaylian.
Do you write any besides picture books?
I am not published. I don't have any chapter books out, but I have been working on a middle grade novel now for a long time, and which I hope one day will be in the world. So that's one of my dreams, is to be published in the middle grade category. So I've had some that I've written that haven't been published, and I'm working on something else now that I hope will be. But I work as a picture book writer, and I work as a writer for other things too. So like that is the project that I return to when I don't have other work on my desk. So it's taking me a really long time to finish, but that's okay. Some things are worth waiting for.
Yes, and we have one last question from Alex.
Hi, Alex.
I want to know if you have written any other chapter books for for starters.
Early chapter books. No, but I really love them. And I would like to write one of those as well. I think that even in the early chapter book category, it would be nice we were talking about representation. It would be nice to have some more representation of Latinx characters. So that's another one of my goals. I think that's a great idea. And if you have any ideas or requests of what you would like in your book, let me know. I'll take notes. Either that or you have to go write it.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
Any of the teachers out there, if you want to find some cool activities for your classrooms or send home with the kids, we have our YouTube channel. There's STEAM activities, there's story times, tons of crafts, even yoga. There's all sorts of stuff on there. So subscribe and share those videos and use them in your classroom if you need some space filler. But I'm gonna turn things back over to Cheryl.
All right, and I just want to say thank you all so much. This has been a wonderful conversation. I feel like we could be here all afternoon easily. So thank you, Anika, for being so open and sharing and telling your story today. This has been really fabulous, and congratulations. You are one of our Rhode Island All-Stars, and we're so proud to have you in our state. So thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It was lots of fun.
Awesome. And write as many books as possible.
Will do. We got to get to work.
All right.